Today, we take a look at how I paint my 20mm Waffen SS sniper from the fantastic AB figures range. Yep, that's right, we've got another oak leaf painting tutorial for you. Painting SS camouflage can be daunting and very tricky to tackle, so I'm hoping that another oak leaf tutorial will help cover some of those worries, as well as tackling the rest of his equipment. So be sure to let me know below if you've enjoyed this video and if you want to see another oak leaf tutorial in the form of Vallejo paints. Today we are going to be looking at AB figures in this painting tutorial, as I always do when it comes to 20mm figures. I very rarely go away from AB figures. That's not because there isn't some other great companies out there. I just love AB figures, and Nick is a huge supporter of the channel. So we're going to be looking at German snipers, specifically a sniper for my Waffen SS. So let's get to it. So like I always do, I will prime my figure in Tamiya Surface Primer Light Grey. The reason I do this is purely because the lighter the primer, the more those brighter colours are going to stick out, and German colours are notorious for being rather dark, so if we can make them a little bit brighter, then we'll go with that sort of method if we can. So for the camo smocks, I'm going to be using AK Waffen Brown. Now, if you are unfamiliar with some of the videos that have come out recently, I have actually got a 20mm Waffen SS purely oak leaf focused tutorial, so you can really see what I'm doing in a lot more detail, and that way it might answer a few questions that you might have, because this won't touch on that in as much detail. Then for the bread bag, I'm using Russian uniform World War II, so I'm leaving the oak leaf pattern that I'm going with here as is. For now, I'm going to paint in all the blotches and that in a little while. Then for the wood, I use flat earth. So obviously this guy's got a Kar 98 with a scope, so I only really have to worry about that. If you had a shovel or anything similar, then I'd be painting that as well as a bayonet handle. So for his scope and any other metal parts of the rifle, I'm going to be using black grey, as well as his boots and also his webbing. You can use a really dark brown as well if you want to, but I think black grey works. Or you could use black and then you could layer with a lighter black grey if you really want to. And then for the part of his collar that's sticking out, I use AK Field Grey Base 1. This is just a really good field grey colour from AK Interactive. Vallejo do a really good field grey as well that you could use. And then for his Kar 98 strap, I'm using German camo medium brown for that one. You could also use khaki if you want to, but I think medium brown just looks more like the leathery colour they would have used. For his water bottle, the parts that don't have the strap going down it, I use English uniform. You can see I'm using a really fine brush here and just taking my time not to make too many mistakes. Now we can focus on the blotches. So depending on if you're doing spring or autumn oak leaf, I'm using spring here. I'm using AK black green for the poncho that's going over the torso. And you can see that I'm literally painting on little blobs and I'm building those blobs up. But we'll look at those in a little bit more detail right now. So you can see that all the different types of blob that I'm putting in. If you're doing autumn, you can use AK grime brown. So I'll use that on the helmet later on, but I won't show you me putting those blotches down just in this part of the video, purely because you're just wasting time and you get the gist with the green anyway. And these are the sort of patterns that you want to be trying to achieve, just irregular blotches, but they don't really have a sharpness to them. And then for the scope, I'm using Luftwaffe uniform World War II. So I'll make sure I get the front and the rear end of that scope just to make sure that we've achieved that. And you can add a little bit of white later on just to really give it just a little bit more detail and make it look like it's got a bit of a reflection to it. And then like I always do, I'm going to go over the model now with no oil and technical medium at a 1:1 ratio. For those that are unfamiliar with why I go with a 1:1 ratio, it's basically a thinners from Warhammer. So if you go into the shop, you just say, oh, can I have no oil with some of the appropriate thinners? And you thin it down at a 1:1 ratio. That's just going to remove the sharpness of the black wash and it's just going to make it a little bit easier to use and not be so messy and dark. Now it's about going back over the first layer with the actual base color for the Waffen SS ponchos, so for the oak leaf, and that's just going over with that Waffen brown again. And you can see I'm just adding in blotches where I can see. You could probably miss this step if you really wanted to, but I think it just helps that base color to really pop. So for the autumn oak leaf, I'm going back over those dark brown spots now with grime brown, and it's literally just I'm adding in little dots of it inside of it. You're not going to see it. This is just to make it pop just a little bit more, because we've washed it. It's going to be darker. We want to try and bring that lightness back to that dark part, if that makes sense. Then we want to go with AK light brown and grime brown at a 10:1 ratio. So we're literally adding in just a touch of grime brown just to darken this really bright orange color. And then you're just going to add in tiny little dots, and you're just going to keep building those dots up until they make a big blotch, or until you've had lots of little tiny dots and they've left little gaps between each other just to make it look as it would do on the uniform. So you can see I'm taking my time here. This is the main part of this model. So the eye is going to be drawn to the camo scheme. So take your time here. Everything else can be rushed. Just get the camo right. Now, if you wanted to go with the spring oak leaf, you can go back over those areas with black green. You can see, so I've just done the poncho over his torso in this color. I really wanted to mix it up. Obviously, being a sniper, I'm sure we would have had access to different types of camouflage and whatnot. Whether this would make too much sense, maybe in sort of summer and spring or autumn, obviously it probably would make sense, but orange and green probably isn't the best bet, but it looks pretty cool in my opinion. And then we go with AK golden olive and black green, and again at a 10:1 ratio. We're just adding a tiny touch of that dark green color into the really light green color, and you can see that the process is exactly the same as it was with that orange. So I'm adding in tiny little dots here. The size brush I'm using is a 0, and I'm making sure my tip is extremely well maintained and it's got a lovely point on it. That way we can really get some really fine dots. I know people use toothpicks. I just don't have the control with toothpicks. I think a paintbrush works really good for this if you've got a brush with a really fine tip. If you don't, you're going to be struggling to accomplish what you're seeing on the screen now. So once you're happy with that and you've got all of that looking good, we can then make a move onto the rifle. So we're using flat earth, and this is a really quick technique that I like to do, and it's literally just scratching the actual highlights and layers into the rifle. So I'm just scratching on the paint here. I'm not trying to paint in blotches and really focus on anything. I'm just adding in lines just to make it look like it's got wood grains from afar. Then I use flat earth and orange brown at a 1:1 ratio. So we're building up to that final highlight and bright color. And this orange brown just really adds a nice look of like a new wood color to it. And then finally, as I've already mentioned, we use orange brown. You can see that I'm just scratching in little lines here and there just to really simulate those wood grains. And hopefully that is appearing on the screen for you guys to appreciate. Then once we've done that, we can go over the rifle strap with that German camo medium brown, just paying particular attention to the outer edges. You can leave some of that darker original color in the middle, so it looks like the strap sort of bent in on itself, as a strap would do, especially a worn strap. And then we can use German camo medium brown and orange brown at a 2:1 ratio, so that's just going to give it a bit more of a worn leather look, which is what your ultimate goal should be. And you can use these same colors, so medium brown and then the orange brown, for his helmet strap as well. And then finally, if you really want to go overkill, you can do the same process but at a 1:1 ratio. This step really isn't a requirement, but I think it really does add a little bit extra to that strap. So for the bread bag, we can use Russian uniform World War II. You can see that my technique is very similar all the way through. I like to scratch on when I'm doing so I can really be a bit more accurate opposed to putting on blobs of paint and making a huge mistake and really struggling to fix it. And then our second colour for that is going to be Russian uniform and German camo beige at a 2:1 ratio. You can see I'm scratching. I'm not painting all of it this time, I'm just adding in little scratches here, just trying to make it look nice and picking out all the bits that are protruding, like sharp edges, etc. And then for the water bottle, as easy as this is, we can just go back over it with English uniform. We're literally adding in just a blob on each side because that's all it is. And then for the highlight, we use khaki grey, not German grey, khaki grey, and it's just a line on each edge of that water bottle. So we want to highlight the webbing as well as any of the metal parts, so we use black grey. This is a layer, not a highlight. We will get around to the highlight in just a moment, so you can see that I'm now moving on to the rifle. I'm putting on some paint on the scope as well as the barrel now, and I'm being pretty generous with it, giving the boots a bit of a go, but I like to heavily dry brush the footwear that my miniatures have, just to simulate a bit of like worn combat look. And then for the highlight, we use black grey and basalt grey at a 1:1 ratio. The reason I brought up that comment about the boots is because I've been guilty of paying a lot of attention to the lower half of a miniature before, and then I end up dry brushing the lower half as if they've been out in the bush for a long time or in the forest, whatever, and then all that hard work goes to nothing. So don't really take too much time on the lower half, especially if you're going to be dry brushing, just to simulate a lot of combat or a veteran who's been in the thick of it for a long time. And then we just add a dot of white grey to that scope, and then you can follow it up with a gloss varnish. You can just put a tiny little bit of that gloss varnish on the scope just to give it a really nice shiny reflection. Now in terms of the flesh, I'm not going to show you how I painted this guy's skin. I do have a 1/72 scale flesh tutorial that you might find interesting. I'll leave a link to all the videos I've mentioned today in the video description. And then there we go. So we've now got a sniper added to the rest of my Waffen SS. I've actually got a couple more that aren't in this shot as well. So the collection is growing very slowly, but is growing nonetheless. So let me know below how you found this. I have promised a Vallejo only oak leaf or SS tutorial. That is in the making. It is coming. So for those of you that are waiting for that, rest assured we have got one in the works for you. A huge thank you goes out to my Patreons and YouTube channel members. You guys are absolutely fantastic, as well as Nick for supplying me with these models and for continuing to be such an amazing support of the channel. It really is appreciated. Thanks again, guys. Don't forget to let me know below what you would like to see next, and I will catch you at the next one.